I'm very delighted to be here for Deborah and for the concept of applied brilliance. Brilliance has been circulating in my mind the last few days thinking about it. The word actually describes what the Buddhists would say was the ultimate nature of reality. And so I was thinking, what can I give you all at a time in between tiramisu and coffee that you can take home with you, and especially in this time where we're watching old structures crumbling. You know, the neocons, they wanted creative destruction. Well, they've got destructive destruction. And it's going to be up to you, I think, and it's going to be up to applied brilliance to come up with the creativity based on it. They really, we're really seeing how many trillion have been lost in paper wealth that in the last couple of weeks. It's incredible what we're watching. We're standing at the brink of a truly amazing history. But I don't think it's terribly bad. I mean, I didn't lose that much, maybe a third of my pension so far. But and I hope none of you have suffered too much. But of course, the world is suffering tremendously. But in a way, I think it's the beginning of a new level, a new liberation. And where we will draw that from is applied brilliance. Now, you are all very creative and genius people. I understand that. And that is really something wonderful. Maybe sometimes some kinds of people make you feel ashamed of that. Like maybe in America we see poor Obama, who's like an A+, super Harvard Law Review, super genius type of person, is an elitist or something. In America there's a thing about it. And I understand earlier you had a great talk from the guy from Michigan about how it's so dumbed down and how our education system has been ruined for the last 30, 40 years. And how it's a major thing to rebuild. But the genius is what is needed now, absolutely needed. And this is where I could just give you a quick thing on Buddhism, I think. I think you need that for this applied brilliance. And applied brilliance fits with it perfectly. And that is, what is a Buddha? I understand Siddhartha was mentioned. Siddhartha was the name of the Buddha when he was a prince. When he became a Buddha, it was not because some god told him he was a prophet, or that there was some religion people should deal with, or even that anybody should obey anybody. This was not the thing, although he did meet with the gods, and he talked with them, and he enlisted their help, and they urged him on to become a Buddha. What a Buddha is a being that fully understands the nature of reality, by definition anyway. They all could be nuts, there could be no such thing. But I still am not certain of that myself, but I have had enough hints that I think they are not nuts, but I have to admit they might be. But the key point is that what a Buddha represents, when people understand that, is that you and I and all of us have the ability, human brain has the ability to completely understand our world, our entire environment, and ourselves. And when I say completely, I don't mean like counting every neuron necessarily, but what completely means is enough to be able to see to it that suffering comes to an end, and then that we can enjoy bliss, actually, and not only enjoy it, but share it with others. And that's what Buddhas do. Buddhas are professional bliss sharers, which is not as easy as it sounds, because people who suffer and who are miserable and who are confused are afraid of bliss, actually. And if you are honest with yourself, you might realize that you are too. I always like to ask my audiences, like, whenever you feel really happy, really for no good reason, just suddenly feel bliss welling up within you, doesn't it make you a little nervous? What the stock market is going to crash the next day? Someone's going to spank you, someone's going to run over you, something's going to go wrong. If your friend, your mate, child, parent comes home all blissed out, are you happy about it? No? What do? What did you drink? What did you take? What happened to you? Are you about to have an episode? You become nervous until they calm down and rejoin you in our normal level of sort of muted misery with a few sort of relief sort of around, So it's hard to share bliss, because apparently when someone attains full knowledge of the nature of the world, and that means down to the subatomic level. Buddha predicted, for example, that atoms are really mental constructs, and that there are no atoms, in the sense that atom means originally indivisible, and there are no indivisible components of reality. Everything is infinitely divisible. Anything you analyze comes completely apart and dissolves under analysis, which is what the quantum people have discovered. He predicted that. And he said, "Why? How do you know?" They say, he said, "I saw that." And with what did he see it? Well, he saw it with subatomic consciousness, because our neurons, actually the brain is itself a bunch of atomic processes and subatomic processes. And if you become self-conscious of every process going on in yourself, in your being, you can be aware of that outside, at least according to the preposterous claim of that scientific tradition, what we call the inner scientific tradition in India. And Buddha was a master of that tradition and fully understood everything. And then what I'm always thanking my stars about, at least for the last 20, 30 years, since I a little bit discovered that, I'm thanking my stars that after knowing the full nature of reality, what did Buddha do? Now, what two things mainly could you do if you fully discovered everything and were totally clear about it? Well, one thing that I think you might do is go, "Oh no, what a bummer! How awful! You know, I'm not even going to mention a word about it to anybody," sort of thing. That might be one. But what Buddha did was he smiled. If you've ever seen Buddha statues, except for the occasional macho Kamakura one, usually they're smiling, because the Buddha's smile is very famous. And the reason he smiled was he felt completely blissed out, completely at ease. Reality is perfect. Reality sustains everything. It's abundant. It has enough for all beings, for everything. And he saw that. Even what we think of as a vacuum has infinite energy. And actually that's where the word brilliance comes in, which I like. In fact, it's a funny thing. There's an expression in Buddhism called the clear light of the void, which is a description of the nature of the deepest level of reality. And people call it clear light, which is not a bad expression, but I always wanted to call it brilliance. And then I sort of hesitated and I wasn't sure, because in a way it's a kind of light that has no shadow. It's an energy that is so infinite that it doesn't brook of any kind of resistance in a way. And yet it enfolds all kinds of interconnections and doesn't eradicate or eliminate anything. And in the Buddha's discovery, and the way he describes it analytically, is you go down through the energy of the moon, the cooling energy of the moon at the deepest level of reality, the deep, seething, powerful energy of the sun, a realm of utter darkness, which is something like nothingness, absolute nothingness, or feels like nothingness to a person who goes through that, which we all have done, by the way. And then somehow more subtly beneath that nothingness lies the level of brilliance. And this brilliance is this abundant, deep, subtle, clear, inconceivable energy that pervades the entire universe. And therefore what a Buddha is that now every time we have died, and we have all died innumerable times from the Buddhist point of view, sometimes when we fall asleep, sometimes when we have ecstatic experiences in orgasm or just pre-orgasm, sometimes when we hit over the head and see stars, we have a feeling, we see this kind of spectrum of energies at the deep level, somehow the shining nature of reality. But normally we don't notice it, because it's like glass. It's like you see right through it. And the normal being that dies and is reborn, they're so used to being a differentiated being, you know, self versus everything else in the universe, that they feel uncomfortable in a space where they are kind of one with everything, and they are in total harmony and total abundance and total bliss. So they sort of zoom right past that and then reassert a feeling of being separated from things. And then they take rebirth, the way the Buddhists understand it. Like we go into a space of darkness when we sleep, then we arise in a dream, then we pass back out of the dream, and we arise and awake in our ordinary senses. We go through that process all the time, and we sort of think the deepest place is a place of unconsciousness, because there's a place beneath the unconsciousness that is sort of superconscious that we normally miss. But anyway, that is the level of brilliance. And I think it's highly intuitive of Deborah to call this that, because the key point about the brilliance is that there is no nothingness. I don't know if you all know that. People, existentialists, for example, great like Miguel de Unamuno, great Spanish existentialist, and others Sartre used to talk about how people were afraid of nothingness. But I don't know, that's a typical human unreason. The lady earlier today was talking about unreason. Afraid of nothingness? Who's afraid of nothing? Doesn't being afraid of nothing mean fearless? Because how can you be afraid of nothing? Isn't nothing nothing? If nothing is nothing, then it's not something you can be afraid of. Nothing can't do anything to you. You can't become nothing. You can't enter nothing. There is no nothing. Eureka! That's something Buddha discovered too. We normally go around nothing, nothing. We think every something that we have, our mind reifies something out of a concept we have. So then we have a concept that is a non-referring term. Nothing cannot refer to anything because it's nothing. And so, but we make up something for that. We think of it as a dark, empty space. And then we even people who are, you know, materialists by ideology. I don't mean materialists by going to malls. Materialists by ideology. They purport to be afraid of nothing. Meanwhile, everybody's in love with nothing. Are you kidding? Let the dentist start drilling on your nerve and give me nothing, dentist. Anesthesia, that is. You know, it's a complete easy way out as if the reality was nothing. But according to the Buddha's view, there's no example in nature of something becoming nothing, just as there's no way something can come from nothing. And beneath apparent nothing, which comes when we look for something and it dissolves under analysis, beneath that is the level of brilliance. And the awareness of brilliance is an awareness of total fearlessness, total confidence, absolute bliss, and complete creativity. And therefore that brilliance is applied by the genius who realizes that nature, which every being, every human being can. And not only can they, but what the whole of Buddhism is about for thousands of years in many, many countries and cultures is the educational process whereby beings develop within themselves, human beings have the best shot, develop within themselves that knowledge of the nature of the world. And then proceed with that knowledge. In other words, just like you want to know what a red light is and a green light is before you want to drive, or you'd be in danger, you want to know the nature of the jungle, you want to have a map of the territory before you venture into it. So you need to have a map of reality. You have to know what reality is before you'll feel secure in it. And that's what it is. That's the knowledge that you can get if you open your mind. Now, how do you open the mind? People wrongly have thought about Buddhism that you open the mind by meditating, and you do not. People who have a closed mind meditate, and 35 years later they jump up and say, "Eureka, my mind is closed." And it's even more tightly shut when they have meditated on that for many years. You know, people who have and the key about and now the key thing that prevents us from this clear light, of course, is our fundamental delusion. The Buddha had then his Four Noble Truths. You know how once he realized that, he said, well, if you don't realize that, you're going to suffer. Everything you do is going to be frustrating. And why? What's the cause of that? The cause of that is if you think, you think what you know now is real. Like each person here thinks they're real, right? And you think you're, not only are you think you're real, you're not wrong that you're real, actually, according to the Buddha. But what you think is not only that you're real, you think that you're really real, as one old Mongolian teacher of mine used to say. And each one who thinks that I'm really the real, and I don't know, the others might be a matrix projection by the master computer, you know, by the Wachowski brothers, and you all might be, I might be in the matrix, you know what I mean? My body might be in a test tube somewhere with something stuck in its brain. So, but I know I'm really real, whether it's just my consciousness or me and Descartes, right? I know I'm here, you know? And therefore, each of us has a second thought that comes with that. I'm the really real as far as I know. And therefore, I'm a bit more real than they are. And therefore, I better worry about them. Because I can imagine that they think they're really real and they're more real than me. And not only that, but none of them agree with me that I'm more real than they are. So here you are in the world. You're the really real. The world is all around you. And you're the most important thing here. And nobody else agrees with you. Not only that, they're mad that you don't think they're the most important thing. And then occasionally you have a nice time, you fall in love, and then you think someone else is more real than you for a short time. And if you're lucky and they love you, then they think you're more real. And that lasts until one of you has the thought, am I more in love with him than he with me? Who's more in love? Who's more real? Who thinks the other is more? Then it's the end, you know. Then we have things like marriage, partnership, you know, it goes on. And mom sometimes thinks you're more real than herself for a short time too. That lasts only a short time, unfortunately. So then the rest of your life, you're going around, you're it, and the universe never gives you enough. They don't give you enough attention, they don't give you enough this and that. And it's you versus the universe, actually, whenever you're really in deep doo-doo sort of situation. And in that situation, who can win against the universe? You will lose, right? Time will make you lose. You will die. You'll get sick. You'll grow old. You'll lose your loved ones. You'll meet your unloved ones, all too many of them. Each of us is about to go out at 9 o'clock and meet one person they really don't like, and one they do. And we want to hope we meet the one we like for the next 8 years, all the time. We really do. We hope sanity prevails over insanity. But of course, I'm not, who would know who I'm for? So I think everyone knows that. Okay. So the point is that we have that idea that we exaggerate, in other words, the degree to which we are separate and special from the world, and therefore the world is against us in a way, in some level, at some deep level, life and death kind of struggle level, and therefore we are never contented and never safe and always afraid and always suffer, and nor always frustrated and never satisfied. So that's the key thing. The brilliance, when you reach the level of brilliance, you realize that it's not that you simply realize some sort of level of nothingness, which how Buddhism is often misunderstood, as if everything is solved because you don't exist. Duh, you know. You really think the Indian people and all the people in China and Japan, all over the huge billions of people who got involved in Buddhism, would listen to some guy who said, "Hey, Eureka, I don't exist." If you don't exist, why are you sitting there talking? Like, who asked you to be Buddha if you don't exist? Like, forget it. I'm going to get back to my tiramisu, you know. So the point is, we do exist, but we exist in such a way that we're just totally interwoven with everything else that exists. The plane of brilliance is the plane that sustains all of the differentiatedness and all of the relativities and all of the nature of the world. And therefore, when you see it on that plane, you sort of have a multiple perspectivable way of seeing it. You can see it from this perspective, but you can simultaneously see that perspective. And particularly, you have realized the value of the other beings. And so if you're an architect and designer, you can see in three-dimensional, like Japanese are fantastic. I remember when I suddenly had this insight about the Japanese people. They are truly amazing. A great Japanese scholar invited me for dinner. I gave a talk at his place, and somehow afterwards he still felt like feeding me. I don't know why. But anyway, he came. There were 6 or 8 of us to this dinner table in a crowded Japanese restaurant, excellent one, in Tokyo. And when we got near the restaurant, he just subtly gestured like this, and everybody stopped in their tracks. And then you could feel his mind went into a 3-dimensional, out-of-body experience. And he sort of measured my body like a volume and all the other people. And he felt where I, as the honored guest, would be most comfortable at that table. And he then moved me there. And then one by one, he placed the people at this table, which he'd never seen. It was a restaurant. He had a reservation. He hadn't picked the table ahead of time. But he had this 3-dimensional, altruistic, seeing thing from everybody's perspective, just automatically out of his culture, and of course, in his case, I think out of his enlightenment. But it was an amazing experience. What does a designer, architect have to do? They have to see the volume of spaces. They have to see things. Japanese gardens, of course, masters of that. A little plant here and a volume there and a tree there. It's extraordinary. You know, I saw an amazing one just the other day in Portland, Oregon. I couldn't believe it. So beautiful. So anyway, that's the essence of applied brilliance, okay? It's the nature of reality. Now, now how to get to it is by developing critical intelligence. The word wisdom, I had a little discussion with Deborah about this word. The word wisdom we associate in the West with the old graybeard, you know, who's like, or groundhog, you know, who's like comes out and knows the winter will be like this, has read the Farmer's Almanac or writes the Farmer's Almanac, sort of years of experience, and you sort of resigned to the world this way, and that's what we think is wisdom, but not in this case. So the word prajna, which they call it, it doesn't mean that. It means, prajna means super knowledge, super knowing. So it means super intelligence. And it means knowing, and knowing is by knowing the differences between things. What is useful and what isn't, what is beautiful, what is ugly, what is wrong, what is right, what it moves on and what stops. And knowing that to a super degree where you completely become what you know in a certain way. And the way you get there is by developing critical intelligence way beyond, sort of like Descartes did, where he doubted everything except that he was doubting, right? Otherwise, body and reality and time and all was stripped away through his doubting meditation, like a Zen guy. But then he unfortunately made the big mistake of thinking that he himself, in his doubting, was indubitable. And if he had a Zen master, then would have given a good whack, and then he would have realized he was not indubitable. But, you know, he was only in 17th century France, poor guy. He couldn't do that. So, you know, he just took another sip of wine, you know, and decided, je suis, you know. Amazing discovery for a Frenchman, don't you think? So therefore, but that critical intelligence that he had is just prajna. That is just what it is. and harnessed by concentration, and we strip away the delusory view that exaggerates our centrality in the world, and we while maintaining our responsive presence and interwovenness with the world, and our creativity and contribution to the world, and responding to its situations, we become aware of the whole world as equal with ourselves. And thereby we gain a tremendous leverage, and we gain great happiness, we gain the ability to help others with happiness, and we apply the brilliance. But we can only really find that viscerally when we do so from the level of brilliance and then build back up into interactive levels of different kinds. So that's it. That's the creative brilliance. That's it. What do you think? After dinner? That's your applied brilliance, Deborah. And actually, there's a very female thing about it, by the way. There is a very female thing about it. One of the things about the world, one of the things that we can be grateful for, in addition to dear Baraka, and I notice people don't know what his name means, Baraka. Baraka means the blessing of God. I don't know if it's Arabic. It's like Baruch, they say in Hebrew. They have a big praying Baruch or something like it goes on. I don't know. There's a thing like Baruch. Same word. It means blessing, I believe, in both languages. And so this weird Baraka suddenly popped out of, I don't know, Chicago or Harvard. But we should also be equally grateful, because he's so bright, he would be an egomaniac by now, just like the rest of them, with big jowls and weird posture and puffed out chest. But he's lucky he's got Michelle to beat him up every now and then. He's very lucky, because brilliance, the way that in the esoteric Buddhism, the deep nature of reality is female. That brilliance, the brilliance level, the clear light level, the prabhasvara, as it's called in Sanskrit. And then the knowing of that, the meeting of that with the mind of what they call the mind of super bliss, the sort of dumb bliss mind, that's the male. Dumb compassion or dumb bliss, that's the male. And without the contact with the female, of course, there's no spark, there's no life. So the two are there. But where the saving of this world can only be done when the boys decide to listen to the girls, finally. And my wife is Swedish. I don't pretend that I'm still fully able to do it, guys. Don't worry. I don't pretend that. My wife is Swedish. We've been married for 41 years, and I still haven't been accepted as her disciple. I'm a postulant. I'm a postulant sitting outside the zendo in the rain and snow with pigeons on my head, and I'm waiting there, and she comes out occasionally, looks at me, improvement, you can move a few feet closer, but I've still not been admitted. Because I'm such a redneck and I'm such a chauvinist from my whole culture and the whole thing, Thurman, okay, forget it. And so she hasn't admitted me yet, so I don't pretend to be perfect in this, but at least I know the right direction. Africa, the Islamic world, Middle East, the women have to speak, and the men have to stop locking them up and throwing bags over their heads, and have to really realize that just makes themselves unhappy when they suppress the feminine. Because when they suppress the female, then they suppress brilliance. Then they're just applying stupidity, which is their own dumb ideas, which usually ends up in violence and militarism and never gets anybody anywhere. And in this planet now, we have to, this huge, by the way, we shouldn't be depressed. I'm sorry, I lost much of my pension, some of my pension. We're all going to lose something, because a lot of it was a fantasy, It was like the double leverage credit default BS, They call it a swap, but the S could stand for something else. And just paper, And we're all going to lose, but this is a wonderful opportunity to rebuild on what is reality, recover America's productivity, recover the greatness of our country, where we make things that people like, and we do creative things, and we make beautiful things, and we don't just outsource everything and make some weird system where money makes money, and then nobody pays anybody to do anything except the people who hold the money, pay themselves a lot of money for holding it and fantasizing about it. It's terrible. And then they're miserable. They're not happy. They're on their 4th trophy wife and their 11th net jet and their 16th hotel that was just the same as the last 17th one in the 14th country. And they're not even happy. And their kids hate them, or they give kids Ferraris and they wreck them and kill themselves, and then they feel guilty. So it doesn't help to have more than you can possibly use, just as it doesn't help to have nothing. So we're in a great moment. We're in a great moment to really see it rebuild with someone intelligent who's ready to think anew and to take advice from his wife to start with, and then all the other advisors, but starting and ending with the wife, and behave, you know, instead of some lobotomized, like drugged out female who's going to say, yes, dear, whatever you say. Oh, you want to bomb someone today? How nice. Please. You want to bomb someone? Get out of the house. Get out of my bed. You know, I don't want to see you. Jesus never said, bomb thine enemy. He said, love thine enemy. That's a good thing to do, you know. If you love love means, you know, in Asia, it means to want someone to be happy. To love them means. Doesn't mean just desiring them. It means wanting them to be happy. And if your enemy is happy, why would they bother to be your enemy? So Jesus was making sense when he said, love thine enemy. It's the way to end the war. You make your enemy happy, he's not going to want to fight you anymore. Okay? You keep making him mad, he's going to fight you forever. So that's really wrong. Militarism we have to get rid of. The women will help us get rid of militarism. They never liked it because they know the connection of people. You know, the females are more intelligent. They know that self and other, the boundary of the skin is not the self. You know, they did think so for a while, but then suddenly one day some little voice from inside their belly suddenly said, hey, you get me some strawberries and chocolate and shut up. And don't drink that weird, like, spicy drink. It irritates me. And they kicked them in the gut there, you know, kicked them in the rib. You guys have never had that. All we have is pregnancy envy, and we get overweight. Trying to catch up. Anyway, are you not supposed to ask some questions? Or, you know, by the way, I love Thomas Cahill. He is wonderful. I'm sorry I missed him. I have been giving a speech for a long time, which I could give you, but I need a few more hours. But it's called How the Tibetans Can Save Civilization Again. You know, the Irish saved it once. That's a great book he wrote. He didn't get into that today. He just did the Romans and the Jews. But he gets up to the Irish, and then they saved civilization, you know, at the time of the Visigoths and so on. It's a wonderful book. By preserving learning and so on. And what civilization really is, you know. Civilization is not subways. Civilization is not General Motors, you know. Civilization is not B-51s and nuclear weapons. Actually, industrialization is not civilization. You can have industrial savagery, just as you can have like stone, bow, and arrow savagery, you know. And too much of the since in time of industrialization, too much has been savagery. The whole history of imperialism, the genocide of many peoples around the planet, not to mention the Holocaust, the world wars, too much savagery. Now Iraq, all kind of savagery, you know. That's industrial savagery. Civilization is gentleness, wisdom, tolerance, respect, enjoyment of beauty. That's what civilization is. That the Tibetan, why do people like the Tibetans? Why do they like the Dalai Lama? Because he comes from a civilization that was once a world-conquering civilization itself. They were like Genghis Khan. They conquered China, actually. Why the Chinese are trying to genocide them today and destroy them? Because in the old days they were afraid of them. They built a wall against the Mongolians and Tibetans because they were tougher, because they lived on this high step. But then they discovered brilliance, actually. They discovered, with the blessings of the Indian great masters of India, they discovered the clear light brilliance, the foundational nature of reality. They discovered that it's much more fun to be peaceful and gentle, and much more fun not to beat your wife and to go out and clank around in armor and kill people and drag away some loot. It's much more fun to talk to them and hang out and make a beautiful painting or meditate and reach a realm of bliss. It's much more fun. So they demilitarized their whole country 300 or 400 years ago. And all that energy that we waste in militarism and in the sale of weapons around the world, they put into design and into beauty. And that's why their art is so beloved. And that's why people like to listen to them chant. And why they wrote these great books of philosophy and so forth.